We didn't catch you when you were walking in. If you did not get a ticket, but you would like to ask a question, please let us know. We have extra tickets. You would need to put the other half in the fishbowl, and we'll draw that right when it's time to take questions. Secondly, if you do plan to take or ask a question, we're asking that you sit close to the aisle as possible. And then when your number is called, go on and stand up, and the microphone will meet you in the aisle. Please don't forget to state your name for the Congresswoman. And then thirdly, if you don't get selected today, the Congresswoman still wants to hear from you. So please, at the end of the session, there are comment and question cards on the outside. We'd ask that you just write down your question and comment for the Congresswoman. We will make sure she gets those, okay? So we're about to get started shortly. We're going to start with the pledge. And our colleague from Cedar Rapids who runs the office, Rich Running, he's here. He is a Vietnam veteran, and he's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'd also like to bring to the stage our Congresswoman, Congresswoman Abby Finkenauer.
I hear you're leading us in the pledge today.
Yes, I am.
I'm very excited about that. Thanks, Rich. All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for being here. It seems like, oh, hi. Good to see some new friends and old friends here today. And, oh, can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Is it on? Okay, cool. Well, thank you again. It just means so much. And we've got a little starting music. It's great. I wanted to say, first of all, thank you to Kirkwood for opening up this great space for us today. It means a lot to be able to have this space for folks to gather. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then also a big thank you to our great staff here as well. I know you've already met Yeshi. Yeshi is our district rep from the Waterloo area. And we're very grateful to have her a part of today and all the work that she does. And then you also met Rich Running. You all know Rich from the Cedar Rapids area. We're very happy to all the work that you are doing, especially with our veterans. Thank you so much, Rich, for everything that you do. And make sure if anybody in this room hasn't gotten to know Rich yet, and you have any questions or issues, feel free to go up to him afterwards here and introduce yourself. We want to make sure that you know our staff personally. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here today, but Kim Taylor is also in our Cedar Rapids office as well. She's got prom that they are working for her daughter tonight, so she's very busy. Hopefully, the roads cooperate for everyone for prom tonight. And then also we've got Elaine Klein. She's back there as well. She's from our Dubuque office, so you can get to know Elaine as well. And then we've got Jared Mullendor as our district director. He's back there. He actually used to work for Congressman Loebsack, so he's happy he's over here in the 1st district. Who knew Congressman Loebsack was going to retire? So we're glad to have Jared over here. And then also a couple folks actually that work in the DC office but are from Iowa came out for our town halls as well. We've got Max Ernst, who's actually from Cedar Rapids, who's one of our legislative assistants here as well. And thanks, Max, for all you do. Max really focuses a lot on our healthcare policy, and he is just a wonderful addition to the office and brings, a lot of Iowa perspective and values. And then we also have Tyler Wilson, who is our chief of staff. Can you wave, Tyler? Tyler is from Waterloo, and we're happy to have him as well. And so thank you again, everybody who came out. And before I really get started here, one of the things I wanted to do is give you just an update of what we have been up to for the last 3, now almost 4 months in Washington. There's obviously a lot going on, and it's important that you know, again, what we've been doing and how we are trying to deliver for the 1st District every single day. Within the first couple of weeks of us being there, I thought it was really important that, again, we get something done. And I actually became the first freshman to pass a bill through the U.S. House. And the bill really highlighted and focused on, one of my main priorities here in this district and in Washington, which is creating more opportunities for folks right here in Iowa 1. It was a bill that's meant to make sure that when we're looking at government contracts and research grants, that they aren't just going to big government contractors, but they are also accessible for some of our small businesses right here in Iowa, so that they have access to be able to grow and also, work with some of our bigger government contractors like United Technology and Rockwell, who work with some of our small contractors as well. And so this was something really important for us, and happy to say that not only did we get it past the House, we also were able to do it in a bipartisan way.
Excellent.
It was kind of fun, the guy that I worked on with it is a congressman from Utah. He actually has his office right across the hall from me in Cannon House Office Building. And we were able to talk about things that matter to both of our districts and find that common ground where we could come together and, again, get something done. Because the reality of Washington, D.C. right now, if we are actually going to bring things home to our districts and make progress, we have to get them through the U.S. House, which is controlled by Democrats, and the U.S. Senate, which is controlled by Republicans, and signed by our Republican president. So there has to be those places, and that's something that I'm really excited that we've been able to do so far, and again, actually get some wins, and it gives me hope that we can do more of that, because quite frankly, a lot of that is actually happening in Washington. You just don't hear about it as much, because it doesn't always make for the flashiest of headlines. And so I want to make sure that you know what we're up to and how we're always putting Iowa's priorities first. And then besides passing our bill, we ended up on our first couple of committees. I'm very excited to announce that I'm on Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, where I am the Vice Chair of Highways and Transit. Now, highways and transit is where a lot of the investment comes through that we're talking about in our roads and our bridges. And this is where it's so important that we have a voice from Iowa sitting at the table, letting folks know what's important to us and making sure that those investments, when we're being made throughout the entire country, are actually coming to Iowa. And so we're excited about all of that work that we have to do. And then on top of it, within transportation and infrastructure, besides just surface reauthorization, again, which goes through that Highways and Transit Subcommittee, we're looking at a large infrastructure package that we have to start moving on. This is something you guys have heard talked about for years now. We've heard our current president talk about it while he was running in 2016, also again in the State of the Union. We've heard Democrats and Republicans talk about the need for an infrastructure package, and again, these are some of those places where we can find that common ground. It's something I've talked to both our senators about and uplifted the need to make sure that we are actually investing in our locks and dams, which are desperately in need of being fixed. And when I'm talking about our locks and dams and how important those are, that's not just important to commerce in Iowa and to our farmers, it's important to commerce across the entire country. And if one of those goes down, that is going to cost us millions of dollars every single day. And these are things, again, when you're investing in roads, bridges, locks and dams, we're creating good paying jobs as we do it. And we're also, again, it's one of the best return on investments that we have when we spend those infrastructure dollars. And so we're going to continue to work hard on that on the House side and continue to talk to our Senate colleagues and move that thing forward. And if anything that you guys can do, continue to uplift the need to invest in our infrastructure, because again, it's just been kicked down the road for far too long. And then my other committee that I'm on is the Small Business Committee, where I am chairwoman of Rural Development, Agriculture, Trade, and Entrepreneurship. These are all things that show up in a very big way in our district, obviously, and it's something that I'm excited to get to work on every single day. And one of the really exciting things about being a chairwoman of this subcommittee is I can actually bring Iowans to Washington, D.C. and make sure their voices are being heard. And that's something we have done now. We've had 2 subcommittee hearings, both focused on trade. The first one had to do with the STEP program. That is a state trade program where it works with the Small Business Administration and our states, where they work with our small businesses and our farmers to get access to foreign markets. The reality is it's a program that has worked well in some states and not in others, or we've had issues on the administrative side of it that need to be fixed. This is a program that was created by Democrats, funded by Republicans, and in my subcommittee, I was able to sit there as a chairwoman next to my ranking member who was a Republican and work together to not throw the baby out with the bathwater here, but actually get something done and fix what needed to be fixed in the program and highlight these issues. Again, these are things that are happening in Washington, you just don't hear about them enough. And so the second subcommittee hearing we had again was also on trade, where we brought 2 of our farmers here from this district, also with a representative from the UAW. I mean, this is something that's incredibly important because the state of trade right now and how it is hitting our state so hard because of the retaliatory effects about how this has been done for the last year, it's devastating. We are projected to lose about $2 billion in the ag industry alone in the state of Iowa because of this trade war that was essentially started on Twitter. There was no question there were issues with China and the way that they have stolen our technology when it comes to seeds, you name it, and needed to be dealt with. That we all agree on. How this has played out, however, has been concerning from day one when the retaliatory effects, again, have come back and hit our state disproportionately compared to any other. We are now looking at, again, I've got folks talking to me almost every other day about our farmers dipping into their 401ks, a mother looking at me and saying that she's telling her 3 sons not to go into farming, folks worried in manufacturing if they're going to have jobs down the line, whether it's at John Deere, because they make our tractors here, and can our farmers afford to buy when they don't know what the markets are going to be. Again, this is something that we need to make sure we are bringing folks together on and having real discussion, because you should be able to have trade policies that have markets for our farmers and also protects our workers and American jobs every step of the way. And it's something that, again, I'm excited to continue to get to work on and uplift the issues that we need to here so they are heard loud and clear and we aren't just getting lost in the numbers and it's actual real stories that this administration in Washington are hearing. And with that, those are just, again, what's happening in my committees. Obviously, there's a lot more going on in Washington. We're focused on healthcare, prescription drug prices. We're focused on an investigation now that I'm happy to support looking into managed care organizations, as we've seen in Iowa, which have hurt our state when we've seen the privatization of Medicaid, and what's going on and how they've used for-profit industries to deny care to folks who desperately need it. You name it. Again, there's a lot more that we are working on, and I'm really excited to be here today to get to take your questions and uplift your voices in Washington when I go back there in a few days. All right. Thank you.
The first ticket number is 434072. And please don't forget to state your name for the Congresswoman. 4072 are the last 4 numbers. Going once.
I'll also say, if folks, I mean, this might have been somebody who was here and maybe left for weather or things like that. If anybody has to leave because of the weather, or we'll keep watching where things are. It was a very dicey in Dubuque, a little bit better here. Well, no offense taken, I told that to folks in Dubuque when we got there. When I walked into the Dubuque Town Hall, it was raining, and about 10 minutes later, it was snowing so hard that you could barely see outside. So, again, we'll be watching weather here, but if you do have to head out, make sure we get your question and that we can reach out to you and answer that too. And we'll definitely be back doing more town halls as well, but that might have happened earlier.
The second number, 434070.
Hi there, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
My name is Anbrasu. Dear Congresswoman Abby Finkenauer, thanks for your service to our district, to our country. I'm here to thank you as part of that, and I'm your constituent. I work at Collins Aerospace as a senior engineer. I've been in this country for over 13 years now. I'm here to bring a concern where the immigration system is currently broken. I want to bring the issue to you. I have two kids. One is my daughter Anu, she's 6 years old, and my son 2 years old. They were both born in St. Luke's Hospital here in Cedar Rapids. We moved to Iowa in 2011. I did my master's. I have a master's degree from University of Iowa here. There is a huge green card backlog right now in the country, and it's based on country-based. There is a rule right now which says when you are from a certain country, you can get a green card only so many. So U.S. provides around 1 million green card every year. Out of that, for high-skilled immigrants like us, only 140,000 gets issued, and particularly folks from India and China, because our population is huge, they put a backlog saying that we can get only 7% of that total number. So any of my colleagues, if they are from any other country other than India and China, they can apply for a green card and get the green card in a year or a year and a half. But I have to wait as much as from 15 years to 70 years to get my green card right now. The issues with that is, if I want to move to a next position, there is difficulties because a lot of documentation goes with it if I have to switch position.
Yeah.
So my promotion is withheld.
Yeah.
If I have to travel back home to visit my folks, or something happens to one of my folks, it's hard to get visa, and sometimes you can get denied to come back. Even though I'm in this country for 13 years, and I've paid my taxes and I've done everything legally, still it becomes an issue. And I can't go and start a small business, like you were talking about small business. You said how it's important. I cannot go and start a business because I'm in a visa and I haven't got my green card. I'm not able to do that. So I just, as a constituent, I want to bring this concern to you.
Thank you.
And I like you to co-sponsor. There is an immigration bill right now, which is HR 1044. We would like your co-sponsorship on that bill, which would help immigrants like me, high-skilled immigrants like me, who are helping the community here. We live here, we buy home, and our whole life is here. This is our second home now.
Yeah.
But because of this green card backlog, just purely based on two of the country, just everybody should be in the line and they get on time, except just us. So I just want to bring that concern to you and like your co-sponsorship to HR 1044.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here today and telling your story. And I think it's important that, again, some of the great things about doing town halls is that there are folks in this room who may not even know that your story existed and how the process has worked for you. And I just really thank you for sharing that with everybody here today and bringing it to our attention. I also want to say thank you. I know we chatted about this too just the other day at the open house in Cedar Rapids, and just thank you for your advocacy and for, again, uplifting this issue. It's something that we're having our legislative staff take a look at, and we'd love to chat more about it as well. We've got Max here who is working on these things, and we want to make sure you guys connect today. And because, you're right. Our immigration system right now, the way that it is, it's broken and it's not working the way that it should. There's often a lot of fear and hate around it, and it shouldn't be that way. We're talking about, again, dignity, respect, and the future of our workforce in our country, and we need to be taking it seriously. And so thank you so much for bringing your story here today and all of your advocacy. Look forward to chatting about this some more as well. And I'll tell you, one of the things that we have really been able to look at and dive into here is there's this bill called Conrad 30, which I'm working on with Congressman Schneider, and that's actually having to do with the healthcare industry a little bit more with our doctors. One of the things we've seen, in our rural areas, is just a lack of providers and our doctors able to have serving in areas that have smaller populations, and it's one of the things we want to make sure that we're addressing so that we have the skilled workforce here to fill those positions of need, which we have. And so this is important for us to continue to work on, and I'm just really grateful you're here, and I want you guys to definitely connect to our staff while you're here today as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Next ticket. 4056. 4056.
Hello there. How you doing?
I'm fine.
Good. Good to see you.
My name is Jan Patterson, and I talked to you the other day about the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, and I brought some of the brochures that we gave out at EcoFest, because I thought that might be of interest to you.
Okay.
And I know you probably haven't had time to research it yet, it's been late. But I just wanted to get this to you, and it's also got the websites and everything,
Thank you so much.
because this would be a very important first step into doing something about the climate and the flooding. Is there any movement on getting the flood money for Cedar Rapids?
Yes,
and
thank
the
you.
And everything?
Yeah, incredibly important, especially right now. Oh my goodness, you guys, it is snowing at the end of April. Obviously, climate change is real, and I believe in science, and in regards, I'll first answer the flood wall part of it first here. It's something that I'm continuing to check in with the Army Corps, basically weekly. Where are we at here, and making sure that funding is still coming. I know we were a little scared a couple months ago when there was discussions about funds moving, but luckily it seems that is secure, and everything seems to be on track. From what we're hearing, and I've been talking to folks at obviously the city of Cedar Rapids, and again, things seem to be on track here, and we should see some more movement end of summer, beginning of fall, and we'll keep watching that as well. And thank you for bringing that up in your advocacy, because it's incredibly important, and we know that it's about the future of cities like Cedar Rapids and surrounding areas, and it's about, it's homes that folks have lived in for years that we need to make sure we are protecting. It's businesses that have been there for years, and it's also the idea of businesses being able to grow here in Cedar Rapids as well, to have that flood protection and that security. And so it is really important that we protect that and move that forward, and we've been vigilant on that, making sure that things are moving forward as planned. Yes, and yes, absolutely, and our farmers, and especially with what they're dealing with right now in western Iowa, is incredibly sad to see the devastation, and I know that's something that I've seen both our senators and also Congresswoman Axney really leading the way, making sure that our flood victims over in western Iowa are heard loud and clear and getting the support that they need. And I know Congressman Loebsack and I support any and all efforts to make sure that we get them support as soon as possible here. I know one of the things I was happy to see with Congresswoman Axne too, and our senators, we were able to expedite the process for the FEMA dollars that came in, and our president did an expedited presidential declaration, which we very much appreciate. And I mean, this is something I'm sure when you all were watching the news coming out of Western Iowa, you could feel the pain, because a lot of y'all have lived through it, and it wasn't that long ago. And so just thank you so much for caring about these issues, and I'll continue to do my job supporting Congresswoman Axne and our senators to do whatever we can, to help, again, Western Iowa, but then also make sure that we are vigilant here about the amount that needs to be invested to stop these things from continuing to happen, that we have infrastructure in place to do so. And so, thank you. And then when it comes to some of the things that we're doing right now to address climate change and the issue that we have, I'm really looking at some of concrete proposals here in policy that I'm excited to work on, both on the transportation infrastructure side, where we can do investments. I mean, smart streets is something that we've seen the city of Dubuque work on. Also, the city of Waterloo has been doing as well, and I know these are things that we should be incentivizing and doing more of. This means cutting down on the amount of time that cars are idling. I mean, that cuts down on carbon emissions. These are things that we should be replicating, incentivizing more of. Iowa also obviously leads the way on solar and wind and our renewable energy and renewable fuels industry. That's incredibly important to the future of our state as well, and needs to be continued to be uplifted. We are looking at, actually hopefully next week, HR 9, I'm hoping comes to the floor next week. If not, I mean, it'll be soon. That is a bill with real policy telling the president that we must abide by the Paris Climate Accords, even though he decided to pull us out of that. What that also means then, what that also means is within that bill, I have an amendment that is also requiring the administration to, again, look at what Iowa does well. Let's make sure that we are doing this in a way that we incentivize what's good for our economy here in Iowa and across the country, and that again is investing in renewable fuels, investing in solar, and having discussions that we should be having locally with folks that are affected by this, again, in our states and also across the country. So excited to continue to lead the way there and uplift these issues that are just really important and that we can't ignore, and do it in a collaborative way that doesn't leave folks out of it. Because if we actually are to take climate change seriously, we have to bring everyone to the table, and we have to have these real discussions. And so I'm excited again that we can do that and see some real movement here. So thank you so much for your concern and for being here and for all that you guys do.
Number 434074.
Hello there.
Hello, my name's Herb Giorgio.
Hey there.
Follow up on the climate change. I haven't heard anything about nuclear power. Why isn't that ever part of the mix for reduction in carbon footprints?
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I guess that's a good question. We've seen really a decrease of that in the last how many years, and I know part of that discussion, safety, all that, but you're right. I mean, it is clean energy, and so would be curious to talk to you more about it as well, and kind of see your thoughts and what you're thinking, and what we should be uplifting a little bit more of, or educating folks in DC about. So would you be able to connect with our staff too after this? That'd be great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Four 434066.
Oh.
I'm Patricia Bowen.
Hi there.
Well, I'm very concerned also about immigration and climate change. Those were my initial questions.
Oh.
I'd like and that none of the payment for those medications count toward my deductible. I don't think I'm unusual in breast. We will figure out a way to handle this, but there are so many people in this country. The cost of healthcare is just incredibly expensive. We need to fix Obamacare, but starting all over just doesn't make any sense to me. And I wonder if this might not be one of those things where we can work together in Washington.
Gosh, I hope so.
That's
Yes,
all of
yes.
us. It's a huge issue for so many people.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And you hit it right on the head. The cost of healthcare in this country is not working for folks. The premiums are too high, and we have to make sure that we are doing everything we can do to address the fact that it's not just about access to healthcare, it's also about the cost of it. And these are things that, I know I've been doing my best the last 3 months to really work on and try to find where that common ground is, because it really doesn't matter. If you are Democrat, Republican, wherever you live in the country, healthcare is too expensive, and we need to do more to come up with real solutions here to lower the cost of premiums and also prescription drugs as we do it. These are things that, again, we should be able to find common ground on. And one of the things when, I talk about healthcare and some of the ideas that are out there, and there are a lot of them. There are a lot of ideas about what we should be doing as a nation to look at systems that do work to make sure, yes, that everybody has access and it is affordable. And everything that I look at, I'm always trying to think about how is it going to work in states like Iowa. And so when it comes to Medicare, and I know you're on Medicare and so many of our seniors are, number one, we have to protect it, protect Medicare and Social Security. Number two, we also have to, in the state of Iowa, look at increasing the reimbursement rates that the federal government gives to Medicare in the state of Iowa. So here's one of the things we've seen now. Because of our low reimbursement rates, we're actually one of the lowest reimbursement rates in the country when it comes to Medicare. We're struggling to find providers. We're struggling to have doctors here in Iowa and in our rural areas because they aren't getting, again, the pay is just so different when you're looking at those reimbursement rates. And so that's something that I know Bruce Braley had worked on, and then Congressman Young over in Iowa's 3rd a few years ago was working on as well. And we're excited to take up that mantle and make sure that the federal level does not forget about the inequities that we are seeing in Iowa when it comes to Medicare. So that needs to be addressed, and we're going to be doing everything we can to do that. Secondly, I think it's also important when we're talking about premiums and the fact that it is too expensive for folks right now, and we need to make sure that we have an option for folks to buy in to Medicare to then add competition into that marketplace for insurance companies, which would lower those premiums. It's incredibly important that we start taking these types of steps where we again can actually come together, find some real solutions here, and take this seriously. And I know, again, there are plenty of ideas, especially with 20 or some folks running for president right now. Everybody seems to have a different one. We need to be having these discussions, and we always need to be thinking about how are these ideas going to be impacting the state of Iowa. And so that's my job on the federal level as we're looking at these, to make sure that we're always, again, uplifting issues like the Medicare reimbursement rates that we're dealing with right now, to fix these before, again, any of these ideas are even a possibility. And so I'll keep doing that, and at the same time, make sure that we're doing everything we can to lower the cost of prescription drugs. We have heard President Trump talk about that in 2016 and then also in the State of the Union. It's also something we have seen Chuck Grassley lead on over in the Senate with the CREATE Act. It's something that I have supported over on the House side, which the whole point of it would be to end up getting those biologics, so those life-saving drugs, into generics faster, which then would lower those costs. It's what you see in Canada actually right now, which is why so many folks actually buy their medication from Canada, because of how quickly they're able to get it into generics. And so that's something that we should have in the United States. One thing, again, we need to always be vigilant about is making sure that we are always fighting for working families here in Iowa and not pharmaceutical companies. They have had a grip on Washington, and it's about time that's over. And so I'll be doing everything I can to continue to work on that. And these are things, again, that we should be able to work across the aisle on. And I'm hopeful in the next year and a half we can make some movement here. And thank you so much for all of your story, and also with the ACA. That's one of the things we should have seen at the beginning, was to have that public option when it was crafted, and I think that was one of the biggest mistakes that was made. When we didn't have that public option, it again didn't allow for that competition for those insurance companies, and then went to those higher premiums, and we just can't have that. So that's something that we need to fix. And at the same time, you have my word, your pre-existing condition coverage will not be touched in the U.S. House of Representatives. We are going to make sure that we do everything now. But one of the things I want you all to be aware of too, the administration decided they were not going to defend the ACA in court. That's incredibly wrong. We are talking about folks with pre-existing conditions and how important it is that we keep that the law of the land as we fix what is broken. And we need to make sure, again, that everybody is paying attention to this, and we can do, again, through the House side, we will not do anything to touch that, and we are going to make sure that we defend the ACA, even if the administration won't. So, thank you.
434055.
Y'all are the lucky row right here. Oh my goodness.
Couple. First of all, I want to say I'm so glad to see you back in the district and doing town halls. I hope over the next year you'll be able to do at least one town hall, excuse me, in every one of your 19 counties here. So that would be a wonderful thing. So much more open and welcome than it has been. You mentioned you're on the infrastructure committee.
I am.
And that is very important to me. And I would like to know if anything is being done to create a large, a big infrastructure bill, a trillion, maybe $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill over the next 10 years.
Yep.
I have friends who tell me we can't afford it. But you know what? We were able to afford $1.5 trillion tax cut for the wealthiest people in the country.
Yep.
So, is anything being done to create a large, massive infrastructure bill?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing that up. It's exactly what we're working on right now on the infrastructure committee. The House is committed to trying to figure out a way that we can get this thing done, which has again been kicked down the road year after year here, and get it through the Senate. One of the things that we have heard so far might be the holdup is the Senate, and so I ask all of you in this room again, if you care about infrastructure and investment in our state, please contact our senators and make sure that they know how important it is. I believe they do. I have talked to our senators about it. They are aware how important it is. We just have to make sure that they're doing everything they can to talk to their colleagues as well. Because here's the thing, when we're talking about the infrastructure package, we're talking about locks and dams, we're talking about our roads and our bridges, which we have the most structurally deficient bridges in the entire country in the state of Iowa. We have over 1,000 in this district alone. And when you're looking at our rural areas, that's who's really affected even harder. Or some of our cities. I was just in Waterloo the other day where there's 2 bridges that go through the city that are both structurally deficient. And it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to see that investment. And so that's something that I'm going to continue to uplift as well. We've been going out to our rural communities, talking to county supervisors, talking to county engineers, going on tours of some of the structurally deficient bridges where they are doing everything they can with what they have right now, but they do need more support. And hearing about those priorities, we've been here in the city of Cedar Rapids, city of Dubuque as well, hearing about the priorities that they'd like to see in a larger infrastructure package. And again, with my new role there, I'm able to uplift those issues and again, make sure that Iowa's not forgotten in all of this. And that is what we have seen many times before in the last few years in Washington, or states like Iowa that just have been forgotten when it comes to investment. And another thing that you brought up, I mean, you're exactly right. There are dollars there and there's reason we need to be investing, because when we actually spend on infrastructure, it is the best return on investment we have in this country. It's good for commerce and it's good for jobs. And when we're talking about the amount of, if we're looking at a large infrastructure package like this, it is going to create a lot of good paying jobs. That also means we need to be investing in our workforce and our skilled workforce and make sure that they have access to trade schools and apprenticeship programs where they can work hard, may have a good living, and have a great pension to be able to retire and raise their families. And again, this is something we'll continue to work on, and we have to be working with the Senate on this as well. Another thing that will be part of this that we keep bringing up would be broadband. And there's a couple, so I'm hopeful there because we're taking the right steps. There are a few things that need to happen when we talk about broadband and investment. We found out that there hasn't been very reliable data on where we even need the investment when it comes to broadband. I had some folks from some rural counties in Iowa come to the office where they were showing me apps that they had, where they had to go out or telling folks that they needed to download this app so they could see their speeds and then send it back, because we just hadn't had the data because of rules that were written with the FCC. And so that's something that we are already addressing, and I know Congressman Lobsack had been heading that up as well, and I support that, making sure we get the data and then we know where the investment needs to happen. And it's incredibly important, like I said, not just obviously for infrastructure, but for our small businesses and for the future of our state. I sit on, again, Rural Development, Agriculture, Trade, and Entrepreneurship, where I chair that subcommittee, and one of the things we're really focused on is how do we incentivize more rural entrepreneurs. And so we've had a woman actually from State Center visit not that long ago who has a business that she runs completely from her home. That's an international business where she sells paper flowers that look very real, by the way. It's actually very incredible. And she sends all over the world, and she relies on having reliable internet service. And so telling her story and why that's so important, and why those investments are important, is just, something we're going to continue to do and make sure that we get other, rural entrepreneurs together and talk about more things that we can do to help incentivize that investment, figure out what's been working well, what we could do better, and make sure that people, again, have access to be able to start their own businesses, grow them, and create good paying jobs while they do it, that pay employees well, and again, have the benefits that we need.
How are you?
Oh, good.
So I have a question about the current proposed increase in the federal gas tax. Right now it's 18.4 cents per gallon. Right now the state of Iowa has, I believe, 30.5 cents per gallon. So right there, based on how I last filled up, that's 11% of it. Well, okay, excuse me, it might be 11, my math might be off. Now they want to add another 25 cents to the federal gas tax. This is something that is supported by lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, as well as our current presidential administration. I'm concerned that this is not a good idea, especially when, for somebody like me, I'm on a fixed income. I have to work very hard to supplement my income. And when I think of how much that could add to my existing expenses, especially when I look at everything else that is taxed on the site, a local option sales tax, anytime my property tax goes up, I'm a condo owner. All of that, if I were to add that up, that's actually a substantial amount of my income that I think I'd rather prefer to spend myself rather than have the government spend it on things that they think would be better for me. I'd like to know, do you support an increase in the federal gas tax?
Well, thank you so much for your story as well and for your concern. There are a lot of proposals out there of how do we pay for a large infrastructure package. So that is one of the proposals that's out there right now. And it's something that I'm going to be talking to our constituents about, Because the reality is, we do have to see investment here. And we do have to make sure, I mean, if you're driving on our roads, our bridges, I mean, again, this is good for commerce and it's good for the state of Iowa. We've got to figure out where do those dollars come from. Again, they are some of the best return on investments we have, so there are a lot of ideas and proposals of how to do that. And something we're going to continue to look at as well to figure out what that is and how it translates to the state of Iowa. So would love to hear more of your thoughts as well, and then also,
Well, I'm asking
Anybody-
about yours, if you don't mind. Do you have a
but
position on
again,
it yet?
this is something we're looking into, and there are a lot of proposals out there. So that's part of why we're back in the district right now, having these town halls, so that we can hear directly from folks about how they feel about certain proposals that are out there. And then how do we actually make sure we have the investments that we need in our communities? Because it does cost money to invest in our roads and in our bridges and in our communities. And we have to make sure that we have folks on board and figure out where our community members are when it comes to some of these proposals. So thank you for being here and expressing where you're at with it, and would love to hear from more folks too, how they feel. And we'll be back doing more town halls, and also feel free to contact our office. And then we'll be doing, one of the other things we really like to do, and I know you mentioned this too, about doing town halls in all of the counties. One thing we've tried and looking forward to doing more of are things we call conversations with your congresswoman, where we're doing them in, I mean, some of our smaller towns, so we've done them in Grinnell, Guttenberg, Cresco, Vinton, just to name a few. And where we'll sit around the table and we'll pick a topic that's really important, and we'll have kind of back and forth discussion about what your thoughts are, and again, because sometimes it's not just me talking at you, it's also your ideas as well, and I think that's just really important, because we're not always going to agree on everything, but when we can have those discussions and respect each other and where everybody's coming from, I think it makes our democracy better, and it's important to, really to cut down on some of the misinformation that's out there. So we'll make sure to, that we're pushing those out to folks here in this room, so you know where our conversations with your congresswoman are taking place, and then our town halls too, as we have them. We're excited. We just do one in Waterloo and Dubuque, and we'll continue to do more of them throughout the district as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's one of those things we're all looking at right now. Again, there's a lot of proposals out there when it comes to all of this and how we pay for an infrastructure package. So I know that the Senate's looking at things right now too, and we just have to figure out where we can come together on this and get something done and get that investment into our communities that are so badly needed.
Options you're looking at?
Yeah, well, that's one of them. There's some other things when it comes, there's use tax, you name it, that are being looked at as well. And so we're continuing to, again, kind of look at what the options are that are out there. So, thank you.
We have time for one last question. Four, 34071.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's raining, it's snowing. And
Well, thank you for being here in the rain and the snow.
You could be anywhere else, you're super busy, so thanks for being here with us in Cedar Rapids. Longtime Cedar Rapids native. My question also has to do with the gas tax. Right now, we just saw an increase here in Iowa of 43% just a few years ago, and now property taxes are going to be going up. If we have a 25-cent increase, that's a 51% gas tax increase. I think the average household spends about $600 on gas tax alone each year, and this would drive up to about $900 each year. And I've just graduated college recently. That's a big part of my meager earnings right now. And so right now, I would really encourage you to say no to a gas tax if that were to come up. I just think it's not good for at least Iowans, especially now that our property assessments have gone up, and that's going to be an increased burden here in Iowa. So, thank you very much.
Well, and thank you so much too for voicing your concern. And please feel free to reach out to the office if you've got friends that have similar concerns too. And we do really, again, need to figure out how do we make those investments and how do we pay for them. And these are discussions that are ongoing right now about how we get that big infrastructure package done that is desperately needed. There is no debating that. We know that we need investments in our communities. Our economy, quite frankly, depends on it, especially when we're talking about our roads and our bridges and our locks and dams and the future of the state of Iowa and what that will cost us if one of those goes down. And so we are, again, doing everything we can to figure out how do we make that investment, and want to have as much input as possible from constituents here in the district about what your thoughts are and how that will impact folks here in Iowa and their everyday lives. So thank you, appreciate it.
You know, they're wanting to put an extra tax on electric vehicles because they don't pay gas.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that looks like that's one of the things in the State House. Speaking of the State House, are they out yet? What is it about? Did they just adjourn, or are they still going? Oh boy, are they done? Oh my goodness. Oh gosh. It's been an interesting couple of days in the state of Iowa in that State House, and I would just like to take a moment to give a shout out to some of your state reps here in Cedar Rapids who have been working really hard, and I know a lot of my good friends down there that I had served with for 4 years who've been on the front lines the last few days, fighting for our values and fighting for equality in our state. And I've been thinking about them the last few days as well, and I'm sure y'all have been watching the news, and there's a lot going on, and this is disappointing that this is how the session has ended, with a lot of things just kind of being done in the middle of the night. So I send a thank you to your representatives when they get back home. They just had some marathon sessions in the last few days, so thank you. Yeah. One more question? Okay, I think we have time. Yeah, we have time for one more. Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Good.
Thanks, Josh.
434062.
Well, hi there. Elwood, did you give him your ticket?
Hi, I'm Frank Olson.
Hi, Frank. How you doing?
Hi. Given business as usual, climate scientists tell us that in this century, sea levels will rise at least 4 to 8 feet. Global temperatures will rise by 6 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit. Major cities and countries, including Hong Kong, Shanghai, Jakarta, Miami, New York, Mar-a-Lago, and various island countries will be flooded. Diseases such as yellow fever, malaria, and Lyme disease will spread. Crop yields will drop. And climate refugees will number in the hundreds of millions. What is Congress doing to protect our children and grandchildren from an increasingly uninhabitable planet?
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate your concern as well. It's an important one, and it's something that deserves real attention to be paid to it. And again, one of the things that I'm hopeful for, and like I said, I think it's next week, but hopefully soon. I really do. I believe it will be up next week. HR 9 is again something that we're going to get through the House, which is requiring the administration to abide by the agreements of the Paris Climate Accords. That is one of the first ways that we have to do this, because the United States, essentially, with pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords, took us off the table and took us out of that discussion, when it is something that is a global discussion, and it is something that it's important that when the United States is a leader on so many issues, we should be at the table as we are discussing how do we make some progress here and do it in a way that makes sense here in the United States and for communities across our country. And so that's something we're finally going to get some concrete things done on. And then also, again, in that Transportation Infrastructure Committee, we are looking at that big investment, looking at smart streets and the way that we are investing in our infrastructure so that it is sustainable and that we actually do it in the right way. There are a lot of new technologies out there, and we should be using them and being smart about how we invest. And so thank you so much for everything that you brought up here today, and hopefully again you'll have some good news out of the House next week. So thank you so much, appreciate it. And I know know we just have a few minutes left here, so I just want to end by saying thank you to everybody who came out here today and all of your different concerns. It's important for me, again, to get to hear directly from you and take those concerns to Washington. That is how I do my job well. That is the whole point of being a representative. And we head back again on Monday, and there's clearly a lot of work to do. And I'm excited every day to have the opportunity to do it and bring, again, some investments to our communities here. A big thing I want to make sure of, again, I know I introduced my staff at the beginning, but please feel free to reach out to them both in the district and in DC because they are here to serve. I say my staff, but they're yours. You pay for them.
That's right.
And they are there to serve and make sure that you have what you need when it comes to, obviously raising your concerns about federal issues and federal policy, but also with federal agencies. And so I want to make sure that if there is anything that comes up with the federal agency, whether you have issues with your Social Security or Medicare, or have issues with, or veterans issues, or getting access to your medals, or you know friends who need their medals, who haven't received them, contact our office. We are very happy to be able to get those types of things done. Also, when it comes to immigration as well, one of the things we've already have done in the Dubuque office, there was a woman that was a professor at the University of Dubuque, and she did everything right to renew her visa, did it all right, and then unfortunately, the way that it was sent from UCIS, it ended up cutting off her address, and so she didn't receive her information when she should have. And so our office was able to track that down. Here it was sitting in a post office somewhere, and we were able to get that to her. She was able to fill it out, and we were able to get her back to work. But these are things, again, that we're able to help with, and we want to be able to help with. That's my job here. And we're excited to, as we go on, to really figure out ways we can get this type of information out to folks about grants that are available, whether you know folks who are in nonprofits or whether you have somebody that's working to start a business, what we can do with the Small Business Administration and access to those programs, or to our farmers right now. There's a lot that needs to be done, and I want to make sure that we get the resources that we have out to our farmers, especially right now where we're again, projected to lose $2 billion. I've heard from folks again dipping into 401ks. It's bad, and I want to make sure that people know they can contact our office for any concerns they may have or anything that we can do. And we're going to do our best to make sure again that we get that information out to folks and to organizations and agencies that are on the ground here, working with those who need it every single day. So. Thank you so much for everything and for being here today, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Yes.
Appreciate it.